the great Ray Evernham, you forever changed NASCAR because you brought in this concept of get the ass of the car up so the spoiler can go to work. And in a suite that day was Rick Hendrick. And all right, now you did perfect. You changed the sport. The crew chiefs are calling you. Now fill that gap in, because there's Rick Hendrick. Tell me where you were and how much longer did you spend with Bill Davis, and then when did Rick call you, or how did it work?
Well, it was actually John Bickford who called me, who is another great mentor of mine, and Jeff's stepdad. And he's, John Bickford has guided Jeff Gordon and Ray Evernham in just about every step that we made, certainly in the younger years. And if you're not familiar with John Bickford, he's Jeff's stepdad, but he's the guy that brought Jeff through quarter midgets to sprint cars to everything, right? So
Ray, well, let me say this. I want all the fans to know this. Explain to everybody how smart John was. I mean, he was a little engineering-minded person himself too, right?
Oh, yeah. John, incredible machinist. John had a company that built hand controls and things like that for handicapped people to drive cars. Amazing machinist. But he also, part-time, they were running sprint cars. John invented a lot of the things that are continue on sprint cars today. Some of the way the oil pump systems work and wing sliders and stuff like that. John Bickford really developed a lot of that. All of the kingpin style hubs and spindles. He had a company called MPD right down. And I'll tell you, John was smart enough. Pit stops. He built the early jacks for us, hand built aluminum jacks with special pistons that we could jack the car up faster and all that stuff. John's he is just a genius. He's one of those guys that he's like a smoky eunuch. He never forgets anything that he reads. Like if he reads the encyclopedia, like he could take your gallbladder out. You know what I mean? He's just
and this is Jeff Gordon's stepfather. Okay, I just think that was very important. He's been
Jeff Gordon's. So I think he adopted Jeff when Jeff was only about 1 year old. Mm. Yeah, just an amazing guy and well respected in the industry. But so we're running good. We're sitting on poles. We hadn't won another race or whatever, but get a call from John, and John says, "Hey, Jeff's got an offer from Rick Hendrick." And Jeff had, I knew, quite honestly, and I don't want to get into who and what, but I knew Jeff had been offered stuff from other Cup guys. And I will tell you something about Jeff Gordon. And to this day, he's like a little brother to me, but loyal. He got offered a ride that had other famous crew chiefs involved. And he said, "Hey, I come, but I want to bring this guy Ray. We really get along good." And the other car owners told him that you don't get to pick your crew chief. We're going to put you with this guy here. And Jeff didn't go, but then he got offered the Hendrick deal. So I guess he went and met with Hendrick. And John Bickford calls me up and said, "Hey, we want you to go over to Hendrick and find out, why they're not winning as much as they're." So I have to go over there now. And I'm like, oh my God.
You're fixing everybody. You're fixing Bill Davis. Now you're fixing Hendrick.
Well, no, I'm thinking to myself, are you kidding me? This is Rick Hendrick. Oh my God. The Days of Thunder. And it's like, and Tim Richmond and, oh my God, what am I going to do? So I go over there, and Jim Johnson, not Jim Johnson, the driver, Jim Johnson, who was the manager then, he's probably not happy because he's got to take this guy around and show him everything. And I'm judging them, and I'm thinking to myself, this guy's, he's going to hate my guts. So we went around the whole complex, and the stuff I saw was amazing. It was incredible. It was nothing that I had seen since I'd left Penske, right? And the tools, the equipment, just amazing.
Race car driver Kenny Wallace here. Live events are about creating memories with friends and family, and tickets provide that opportunity. I'll never forget when I attended Game 6 of the 2011 World Series, watching my beloved St. Louis Cardinals. Or when I went and watched Aerosmith, man, I like that Steven Tyler. He can really sing. Grabs that microphone, got all those scarves hanging off the microphone. What a great memory. I like those songs. Sweet Mo. Oh, I won't try to sing. Oh, and for my next St. Louis Blues hockey game, I'm going to use my new sponsor, GameTime, to buy my tickets. With GameTime, you can save up to 60% off buying last-minute sports, concert, and theater tickets in your city. You can get panoramic views from your seat in the app before you buy. You get the lowest price guaranteed, or GameTime will credit you 110% of the difference. You can save even more if you choose a section and let GameTime choose the seats. And your purchase is covered with the most flexible customer service ticketing policy in the industry. Go to the link in my description to download the GameTime app and use code Kenny Wallace for $20 off your first purchase.
I went back and I said to Jeff, I said, look, I have no idea why they're not winning, but I feel like it's because they're not using the stuff that Rick Hendrick is giving them. I said, I feel like with what's there, if we can't win there, we can't win anywhere, because everything that you could possibly ever need is there. They're just not using it. And it's not like, it was like going to, at that time it was two teams, but it was like two completely separate worlds. One was up on the hill, one was down here. One used this motor, or these guys use that motor, or this used this chassis, or the other guy used that chassis. And Hendrick had just started building their chassis, and they were beautiful, like jewelry, but they were heavy, right? And the front ends weren't right in them. And I'm like, I can fix that. You know what I mean? So, I'm like, well, give me those fabricators.
Front end is your specialty.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I just, everybody has got something, right? I didn't get the musical talent. I didn't get dance talent.
I love it.
I never got to be as good a driver as good, but for some reason, I could just sit and see it, you see the tire, you just see how it's working. And I'll tell you, and I've said this before, when Jeff Gordon talks about it, I see it. It's like a CAD thing working in your mind. It just works. We were racing, not racing last night, but we had a little event at the 1010 Motor Club that Mr. Hendrick and Marcus Smith had. Yep. We keep
that's on my notes. Race cars.
What's that?
It's on my notes, the 1010s. We're going to talk about all that.
We were there last night, and Jeff's talking, and it's like, boom, right back. It's like, look, it's like we had never stopped working together. And, we were playing around at that place last night with his race car.
I want to say this. At one time during my NASCAR Cup career, I wasn't hitting it off with my crew chief, and I came to you as a friend. And I said, Ray, is a NASCAR driver like myself, are we supposed to know how to build the shocks? Does Jeff Gordon know all about the shocks? And I want to jog your memory for a little bit. You said, no, Jeff doesn't know how to build a shocks, but the way he explains it to me, I can fix it. So what you're saying is you and Jeff created this dynasty because you guys had the most unbelievable communication. Is that accurate?
Yeah, and I think we still do. And I always use this in my speeches, and it's true, but like a true team, like a true relationship, it's built on trust, honesty, and respect. And Jeff and Gordon and I have always had that. And he never told me, he never got on there and said, hey, put a round of wedge in. Hey, raise or lower the track bar. He would say to me, I feel like this when I'm turning the wheel, and as the weight moves, I feel this. And then I would ask him, where are you at on the throttle? Or do you feel, if I nail this down, will it help? He never tried to tell me how to do my job. And honestly, the only things I ever said to him, especially in the early days, is be like, hey, dude, I'm not trying to tell you how to drive, but those other guys are letting off about 200 feet further than you are. And you're flying out, like these cars are not sprint cars, they're heavy. And we used to kid around about that, but we still to this day have an incredible amount of communication. Jeff knows a lot more now about cars than he did because he has to sit in all the technical meetings, and Jeff's smart, right? And you're smart. And I've always said this, great race drivers are smarter than they are brave, right? People think, oh, what makes a driver? Quick reflexes, and there's really brave. No, just like Mr. Miyagi, hey, real racing is here, not here, right? So and Jeff was always very smart at saying, hey, look, if I'm going to focus on what I feel and just let Ray fix it. And we always had that. A lot of drivers and crew chiefs argue because the driver will say, "Oh, the car's messed up," and the crew chief will say, "You're not driving it right." And I've given what I feel is good advice to some crew chiefs when they're starting to tell a driver how to drive the car. I say, "Look, your job is not to tell him how to drive the car. Your job is to fix what he is saying is wrong." And until you can drive that car faster than that guy that's driving it, don't tell him how to drive it. Go work on what he's telling you is wrong.
So now we've entered the territory of a dynasty. Okay, so you go to Hendrick. Well, let me just back up for a minute because I think this is fun. This is where real stories are made. Do you remember, and where were you when Rick Hendrick shook your hand and said, okay, I want you to create this new team? It's Jeff Gordon as the driver. How did that team, when was the moment that you created car number 24 with driver Jeff Gordon?
Oh, it was the day after the first Charlotte race in May of 92 that we won the pole and the race. And I had to go meet then with Mr. Hendrick and knew all of this stuff was going on. And I will tell you, when you talk about dynasty, I look at, is me and Jeff, so it's really me and Jeff and Rick. And because we'll get into a little bit more on why Rick Hendrick was so important. Because like I told you, I didn't get along with Alan, and everybody's got their stuff. Rick Hendrick has always been the type of person that gave me the confidence to do that. He believed in me so much, it made me believe in myself. So, and that'll lead me to the story of the day we met. He's like, oh, okay, this is Randy Dorton. He's going to build your motors. Randy will build what you want. Here's, I forget who was in charge of the chassis shop then. Might have been Gary Dehart. Say, hey, he's gonna build your cars, and this is Wayne Stemler. He writes the checks, and Jimmy Johnson manages, and here's how it goes, and and this is going to be your building. And it was a really cool building because all the stuff from the Days of Thunder deal was in there. It was really cool, right? I was like, oh, can I keep that stuff? They're like, no, we're gonna have an auction, right? So it was really cool. But I was like, well, cool. So I'm going to be the team manager and chassis guy, and I'll put this deal together, and I'll take care of the chassis. And I'm going to go and I'm going to try and hire Andy Petree to be the crew chief. And Rick's like, no. You said you're going to be the crew chief. I was like, no, I don't have any experience. I don't want to be the crew chief, And he said, well, Jeff wants you to be the crew chief. I said, Mr. Hendrick, I don't have any experience of being a crew chief. I'm a really good chassis guy, and I can manage this place. We should get like Andy Petree or somebody to be a crew chief. And he goes, well, you're going to be the crew chief. He said, that's the only job I got. Take it or leave it. And he saw something in me and in Jeff that he let us fumble around for the first year. We fumbled around, we came close to winning. We won the 125 and we came close to winning, but he was very patient. And he also stood behind me when I wanted to do things different, because you got to remember, Harry Hyde was there, and Gary, and, Ken House, who was always a pretty open-minded guy, but there were a lot of people there going, that won't work. You can't do that. We've always done it this way. And I'm doing things different, like way different than they.
No more 350, 400 in the rear, huh?
No, and no more, and like, say, talking about, hey, well, that's plus or minus an eighth. Yeah, that ain't good enough for me. We're going to make it plus and minus 0. That's impossible. When you weld it, it's going to whatever, right? So, on the way I wanted my cars built. And then I would go up there and argue. Me and Eddie Dickerson almost got in so many fist fights up there, because, and then finally, and Rick supported me. Like when he comes in there one day and sees us doing all that crazy pit crew stuff, and he says, "What are you doing?" I said, "I don't want to make the mechanics do it." I said, "I'm working them guys 16 hours a day. I want to have a separate pit crew." He's like, "What?" And when he got it, he supported Jeff and I to become Jeff and I, right? Like he allowed us to do things differently than his company was doing. And, by the time we got done, I felt like by 95, 96, the Hendrick cars, we were so far ahead of everybody else with our cars, with our aero program, like engine program. And it all came down to engineering. And the first engineer that we hired, 1992, and I believe he was the first engineer hired at Hendrick Motorsports, was Brian Weitzel, and he's still there. And he had to drive the truck for a year because we couldn't hire an engineer. So he was a truck driver, but he was our engineer. And then, man, they hired, Steve Levitt came in, and Don Letarte came in, and Rex Stump came in, and Gary Aker came in, and all of a sudden, Hendrick was that juggernaut, still are. Our cars were. I don't know. Do you remember that time that Gary Nelson got mad at me and they took 24 car apart in the bay at Michigan?
So I want to tell everybody this. Hang on, everybody. We are going to get to T-Rex because I told somebody yesterday. I said my son-in-law Brody Pompey is an incredible engineer. He builds outlaw carts right here out of my shop. He goes, "Oh, when you talk to Ray Evernham, make sure you talk about T-Rex." I said, "We will, and we're going to get there, everybody." But I want to go back a little bit because you did create this incredible minds of geniuses. You had all these smart people in there, but Andy Petree is what I really zone in on. You could say now, Andy's going to watch this. I love Andy Petree. I drove for Andy. He gave me some of the greatest runs of my life. Earnhardt and myself, first and second at Talladega. But I love Andy. And Andy is a strange character because he's up in the mountains there. You could say, oh, he's country. He's a country boy. But Andy hired, and I got brain fade right now, he hired that Ford engineer. And when I was with Andy always had an engineering mind. Leo Jackson creating camber in the rear ends, making the rear ends have camber. So Andy was always engineering minded through Leo Jackson. But you always talk about Andy Petree. Tell me about this relationship with you and Andy.
It started when I was at IROC. Andy was,
wow,
I don't even think he was crew chief on Harry Gant's car then, but he'd always come say, "Hey, what's up? What's up with what are you doing with the IROC cars?" And Andy was always nice to me, talked to me, but he hung around the IROC garage to see what we were doing, because we were testing shocks and radial tires and doing all that stuff. And we just got to be friends. And I like Andy, and
he's no bull like you.
Well, and he thinks like it's just not enough to race. He races to win, right? And he's always, trying to find a way. And he put Jeff Gordon and I together. When he called and said, "Hey, Phil Barkdahl and Steve Barkdahl are going to do this deal. Will you come help these guys?" So, if Andy hadn't have made that phone call, Jeff and I wouldn't be together, and all this wouldn't happen. And when Andy and I got to be racing, I would go, Andy Petree, Tony Glover, Jimmy Fennig, Robin Pemberton. We were like, we hung out, and those guys helped me so much. And I can tell you, and we've talked about this on the Dale Jr. podcast, Andy's running the 3 car, I'm running the 24 car, and we got our own channel, right? The Andy and Ray channel, and we're strategizing to get both our cars in position. Then we let Earnhardt and Jeff fight it out. But Andy and I worked together when he was on the 3 and I was on the 24 car. We were like unofficial teammates. I mean, we fought hard to who was going to win, or whatever, but we helped each other a lot. There was one time, I got set up information from him, but there was a time I built shocks and put him on the 3 car because he needed to win the championship and we weren't going to win it.
Man, that is absolutely awesome. And that's why I wanted to stop right there and zone in on Andy. I just always thought Andy was extremely smart, and he's got some great stories too. Uh, you know, putting that Busch Grand National car of Schrader, left rear, right front spring only, torsion bar, basically sway bar front, rear, whole car smashes down until NASCAR outlawed it.
Terry Satchel. Was that the guy you're thinking of? Terry Satchel. Terry Satchel. Yep.
That's who I'm talking. I would tell Terry. Terry would give me these numbers with his calculator, and I'd say I want that number right there, and they go, okay, then you got to do this and this, and it was awesome. I mean, I loved.
No, he was a smart guy too. But Andy Petree is one of the guys I do feel Andy's Hall of Fame.
Oh yeah,
in my opinion. So hopefully, one day he gets in there too. There's some of the smartest people, in my opinion, some of the smartest people in the freaking world, right? Mechanically or common sense wise, are in that Cup garage area, or at least they were when with the people that I grew up around. When you talk about Leo Jackson before,
yeah,
amazing. That guy was amazing.
Amazing, right? Leo Jackson was everybody. Let's remind everybody, Ray. Leo Jackson was the one that made it to where we could put camber in the rear ends, and of course the drive plates were radiused, and the axles that I run in my old dirt car right now, which are strange axles, is what they're called. They're beautiful axles, but the splines are radius to this day because of Leo Jackson's original engineering. Because those radial tires, they needed camber. But okay, wow. There we are, Ray. We're starting to talk racing. We got to get back to the interview. I love it. Okay, so you create this dynasty and you go to Rick Hendrick, 47 wins with Jeff Gordon, 3 championships, 1995, 97, 98. I got goosebumps right now, Ray, because when I'm reading off those 47 wins, 3 championships, I think of you and Jeff at the Waldorf Astoria in New York, and, Earnhardt raising the glass of milk up because Jeff's too young to drink. And just for a moment, when you look back, do you ever lay in bed and just for a moment, just dream of those glorious days, or were you too intense? Do you remember those glorious days?
That's a really good question, because that's something that I do remember. I do think about certain parts of it now, but when you're in the hunt, the championships, you remember some of them, like I remember the first championship a lot. I don't really remember 97 and 98 a bunch, those celebrations. I remember certain races. I do remember certain races standing in victory lane and talking to Ed Guzzo or Brian Weitzel. We're winning. We won, right? And I'm like, man, we better get our together because we almost got beat this week. You know what I mean? Did you see so and so? If he hadn't have messed up in the pits, we weren't going to win this race. Thinking about stuff like that. And But the thing I will never forget is being able to stand on the stage at Waldorf. And I was a big Bill France fan, and thank you, Mr. France. Looking up, seeing all of our guys up there in the balcony, and at that time they played Somewhere Under the Rainbow and whatever, or Over the Rainbow, and I just remember thinking, okay, man, if I get hit by a meteorite right now, it's been enough. It's good.
Wow.
Like I'm good. It's like everything that you've ever wanted, and so I remember a lot more about the '95 championship than I do the rest of them.
So this is my opinion. You and Jeff changed NASCAR forever because you ushered in the new era setups, and Jeff ushered in he was not a redneck. Jeff was not a country guy. He was from California, and they could not deny Jeff Gordon's God-given talent. Jeff was and still is one of the greatest race car drivers of all time, our era. But I want to zone in on 3 things that I think epitomize you and that legendary run. Number 1, you came up with this psychological slogans. And the one that I liked, and please fill in, we're going to do this first. Refuse to lose. Remind me, what were some of the other ones that you wrote in the shop and had on the wall?
Well, Refuse to Lose was actually from UMass, John Calipari. So I didn't know, kind of stole it from him accidentally, right? But John ended up being a good friend. But when we sold T-shirts, John got a piece of that. But that whole Refuse to Lose thing came about because in 1995 we should have won Daytona 500, and we messed up in the pits. We messed up in the pits, and we were waiting. Jeff should have just wailed on us, yelled at us, and he didn't. He just said, "Look, guys, it's going to be another race next week. You know, we're good. We're going to go get them next week." And we went into Rockingham. That's when we said we refuse to lose. Like, we refuse to lose. That was a big stepping stone for the team, and that's when we came out with the T-shirts. And that's when John Calipari called and said, "Hey, I actually have a copyright on that." But it was all good. But a lot of the other things, probably there's an old book that set the tone for building the 2014, and that was by Pat Riley. It's called The Winner Within. And it talks about all the steps that build people up and the steps that bring them down. So, in those areas, we had positive, think positive signs everywhere. Like, you couldn't go in the bathroom and stand in front of the urinal without having to read something motivational.
But you did that. You did that.
Yeah, but and I still try and do it, because that's what the difference between a manager or a crew chief and a leader is, right? Your job as a leader is to make people confident, make them get better, make them better than they actually are. And there's a sign hanging in my workshop right now. It says, "The mind can only hold one thought at a time. Make sure it's a positive one." Right? So,
like that.
That confidence, it builds, and it built more and more in the team. And as I said, we got a lot of leeway to do things because Rick Hendrick believed in us so much. And then it started to catch on to the rest of motorsports. And then realizing, that you've got to have that leader that's positive. People have got to know, not just, "Hey, we got to do this." People got to know, okay, here's what we're going to do. Here's why we're going to do it. How do you think we should do it? Right?
Yeah.
Everybody on that 24 team had input. Everybody. I don't care if you swept the floor or right up to the crew chief. Like, if you had an idea, I wanted to hear about it. I'd say, okay, here's this week's goal. I want to take 10 pounds out of this car. Put your ideas in that jar right there, and then we're going to all discuss them in the next meeting.
That's awesome. And everybody said, "Well, we can do this, we can do that." And you got that car. Now, there was another one that escapes my mind, and it might escape your mind too. It's been a long time ago. You had another phrase, something like, from upstart to contender. Yeah. That one, you made these things famous, throughout America, if not the world.
That's another one. That's another I stole from a basketball guy. That's the one that was in Pat. That's in Pat Riley's book. Thank God Pat and I have become friends now, too. But Pat Riley, great leader. Pat Riley, one of the greatest coaches, greatest leaders, manager in all of sports, not just basketball. Like, he figured out how to get those guys motivated. Amazing guy. So in his book, he had a checklist for building a championship team, from nobody to upstart. So in 93, we were a bunch of nobodies that started a team. We gave ourselves a check mark. So in 94, we damn near won the Coke 600, finished second to Dale Earnhardt. 94, contender, or I'm sorry, back to 93. Contender, or from no upstart to contender, that was 93. 94, we come back and win the Coke 600, from contender to winner. 95, winner to champion, boom, we win the championship. And then it was from champion to dynasty. And we never put that check mark in. We left that, again, but when you look at the again, Hall of Fames and things like that. And I still have that checklist here. It hangs in my current shop. But, that's the stuff that, when you talked about 47 wins, those 47 wins were Jeff and I only had 216 starts. We had 105 top 5 finishes. 216 starts. We won 47 races, and woulda, shoulda, coulda. We won 95. We lost 96 by a few points to Terry, but Hendrick. So that influence was at Hendrick, right? And we're really proud that we were able to give Rick Hendrick his first championship. But then we won 97. And then 98, we just, man, we blew it out. We tied Richard Petty's record for wins in modern day. And, but it was incredible times. And I really want to make sure that I say enough about Hendrick Motorsports, because Hendrick Motorsports now has won, I don't even know how many championships, right? 11.
They're in my opinion, okay, look, Rick is a legend. Rick Hendrick is bigger than big. However, it is a house that you built. That is my opinion. Okay?
I helped put the walls up, but I didn't build it.
It is the house that you built, no doubt in my mind. Okay, you said something, and I want to zone in on it. I keep reminding everybody everything that you started. Brother Rusty was going to win that Coke 600. He was gone.
Yeah.
And you were the first one in those days. You said right sides only, 2 tires. That was unheard of. And you did it. And the car went faster.
Poor Rusty. And again, Rusty and I get along. We have had so much fun. But all 3 times we won the Coke 600, Rusty was second.
I never realized
that. He reminds me of that. And he reminds me about Indy with Bill, too. But and what was funny, the last time we won with Jeff in 98, Rusty's leading again. He comes in, he's like, I'm not getting it. They take 2. We took 4. Ended up, yeah. So, but yeah, that was our first win on 2 tires. But we had tested that during the week. Remember, you go into Charlotte on Wednesday and you just run and run and run. And we tested how far we could go on 2 tires and really not lose speed.
That was impressive. I want to make sure everybody, I'm doing my best, everyone. I'm doing my best. So he's created this dynasty. He changed the sport forever with stiff rear springs. The slogans, you got to remember, NASCAR was a little redneck back in those days. I'm the one that said this. And here comes Ray and Jeff, both of them from different parts of the United States. Ray Evernham from the Northeast, and you were a Yankee, and nobody liked Yankees. It's calmed down now, but in those days, Ray, you, Jeff Bodine, you guys were Yankees, and that's I was a crew chief in '84 before I became a race car driver. So you got that damn Northeastern Yankee, Ray Evernham. Then you got this guy from out here in wine and cheese, Jeff Gordon, and they mashed you two together. And buddy, you changed NASCAR forever. Okay. So the other one, so far we've done refuse to lose, the slogans, 2-tire pit stops. These are things that you did. You changed. Now these pit stops. Oh my God. I was a crew chief, Ray, and I changed the tires. There was mechanics underneath the car changing the rear ends, and then they would do the pit stops. You were the first person to bring in race day fresh crew members. Tell me about this.
Well, when I studied, so to become a crew chief, like I said, in 92, when I got hired, I didn't really want to be a crew chief. So since I was going to be a crew chief, I studied races and I looked. And then, I looked and, we didn't perfect the pit stop. That's Wood Brothers and Petty's, right? But what I didn't understand by being around the Cup stuff at Kowicki's for 3 weeks and then being with Bill Davis, I didn't understand how you could afford to give up seconds on pit stops because nobody had really time to pit practice or they were tired. And I said I wanted to bring in people who were athletes to change them, to change tires and fuel the car. And they're like, well, you can't. They got to know how to work on the car. It's like, well, they're not actually working on the car. We can change them to change tires, to jack it up, to put gas in it. If the car breaks, because, at that time, you could have one guy come over a wall and go back. I said, I'll bring the pit crew back and the mechanic can go over the wall. Because, we weren't wearing helmets or any of that stuff back then, right? There was you could have, if 7 people went over, 7 people come back, you put 7 more over, right?
Bobby darn.
Yeah, right. Yeah. So, well, heck, during our pit stop, a lot of people don't know this, but during the pit stop, we sometimes used 8 or 9 men. You could only have 7 over the wall, but they did not have to be the same 7 at that time.
Wow. I never
So,
knew that.
we looked at those things, but we started hiring people that would just come in. They'd come to practice 2, 3 nights a week. They had to come to the meetings. They'd practice damage repair. They'd practice simple things, a tie rod, banging out a fender. We practiced those things, but they were fresh, and because you remember when you were right there with us when we ran for Rookie of the Year, there was no testing rules. We tested everywhere we raced, right? We raced, I think, 29 times, but we also tested 29 times. So those poor mechanics were worked out or wore out. The picture of our group for 1993, there's 14 people in it.
Listen
that
to
was
this,
24
everyone.
shop.
Listen to this, right? This is what they say about you, and I want to read it to you because I think it's awesome. Ray Evernham created a group of specialists, often former athletes, who would train to perfect their assignment task: tire changing, tire carrying, jack up the car, etc. Much like professional sports teams, Ray Evernham incorporated choreography, put his crew members through strength and agility training, and Ray analyzed pit stops on film between races to point out spots where his crew excelled or could improve. Ray Evernham's methods led to the car spending less time in the pits, gaining spots on the racetrack. Ray Evernham, and this is what I want to end with, Ray Evernham is credited with changing the expected duration of a four-tire pit stop from 20 seconds to less than 15. My friend, it don't get any bigger than that. The Wood brothers are the legends, but you knocked 5 damn seconds. And this is right here. This is what, I know this, but boy, it's nice to read that. Talk about that.
It makes me feel good. You want to, there are things I want to make sure I left the sport in a positive manner. Some of the safety things that we did, I'm proud of. But talking about pit stops, I've always looked at as a crew chief as like a head coach of a footballer team, right? You've got your defensemen and your quarterback coaches and whatever, offense, defense. That one of my coaching team was a guy named Andy Petree, who worked hand in hand with me on all of that crew stuff. He former Stanford University football player. Andy spent several years growing that stuff through Hendrick, and always will be proud and thankful for Andy. But if I were to sit here and say, I thought of all those ideas, I'm the guy that thinks of stuff, and then I get really smart people to do it for me.
and that's what the greats do. That is what the greats do. I just want to say this. It just jogged my memory. The great Buddy Parrott. Rusty won 10 races in 1 year, and people were saying, "Oh, Buddy Parrott don't know nothing about chassis." And Rusty would say, "But he sure can run a race team."
Yep.
So you do things differently. Everybody does. Okay. This is the moment of the show that all the racers want to know about. T-Rex. So we're kind of going back to earlier. You started it. You red lighted on me. I'm like, we got it. Hold on. And we can talk about Gary Nelson hollering at you about something else. But let's talk about T-Rex for a moment. So you bring this, you redesigned the NASCAR race car, and you brought it out during the All-Star race, I believe. You changed the sport forever, and NASCAR says, don't ever bring this race car back again. Tell me about T-Rex.
So, all right, how long do you want me to spend on this story?
Because whatever you want to do.
All right. I love it. Well, I want just before I jump on that, I do want to go back and tell you that Buddy Parrott, I think, was one of the best crew chiefs, and his name comes up Hall of Fame all the time. He should be in there. And Buddy Parrott does know chassis and stuff, but he's one of the guys that I studied how he ran a race team. He's one of the guys I studied. He's also one of the guys I never wanted to mess with on pit road, because Buddy Parrott's a tough son of a gun. So if he ever wanted to see you and he wasn't happy, you were afraid of it. But that guy is awesome. So T-Rex, and again, this is it becomes an urban legend, and I get all this credit, but it was Mr. Hendrick that said, "Look, boys, it's time we look at doing something different." He said, "I got Rex Stump here. I'm going to start an R&D deal. I want all of you crew chiefs and to give him your ideas of what in a car and let him design it." So we all talked to Rex Stump, brilliant guy, brilliant. Came from Chevrolet, great overall chassis guy. So within the rules, okay, he designs this car that is structurally rigid, and the springs are outside the frame rail, and the whole front suspension geometry is, again, completely different, just different, right? And
I love this.
he raised it had 3x5 frame rails, and it raised the floor pan, so to get all the stuff out of the wind and all this. Well, we get this car done, we take it to Texas, and Terry's testing it, and it's like, man, it's just not good, And again, like I said, this is Rick's idea, so this is his baby. So we're all going to try and make this thing go, and couldn't make it go. So we decide we're going to at Charlotte test. We go over there 2-3 days. We could test, and 2 o'clock to 5 o'clock in the afternoon at Charlotte, all you're doing is burning gas, right? You can't make any speed. So we had Blacker. Remember that car over there? We were running, I forget what the times were with Blacker, 31 seconds at that time. I don't know, 30 seconds. And we decide we're going to try and get this T-Rex car going. Jeff takes it out, and he runs back. It's about half a second probably off of Blacker. He's like, yeah. And he says, there's something there, but I just don't know. And I was like, well, we're not going to learn anything. Run the other car. Let's play with this one a bit. I said, let me try something. Let me just try something here. And I thought about all of this rigidity and talk to Rex and everything. And kid you not, I said, and back at Charlotte, and the hot setup was, you had 450, 400, and then you had we had to run about a 18 or 19 in the right front, and then we ran our 13 or 14 over in the left front. You ran your 1/8 bar, 3/16. Well, that's a big bar, right? So I said, put a pair of 450s in the back of this thing and equal up the front springs. They're like, what? I said, put equal spring. They said, what do you want to put in? I said, I don't know. Put a pair of 16s in the front of it.
Yeah.
And said, give me the biggest bar we got. Oh my God, 1.25 bar. It had rust on it. It had been in the truck, the whole time. Yeah. Right? So we put that stuff in there. And, Jeff was a guy who I used to run his cars flat. Jeff very rarely ran any more than 49.5% diagonal ever. Right. He was not. So I look at this thing and I was like, yeah, shit, so we screw around, we moved some weight around and I can't remember if we shot getting the left side wheels equal, but I ended up with about 51% wedge, equal front springs, equal back springs. He goes out. I'm on the top of the truck. He runs about 3 laps. He goes by and I click and it's like, same speed. I'm about ready. And Brian Weitzel's up there with me and his eyes have got about this big. And he's like, And I'm like, what? And I look and he goes, he's showing me his watch. It's a second faster than Blacker now. Jeff comes in. He opens his shield and he goes, what was that? I said, I don't know. Well, he goes, it's. I said, look, well, don't do that again. Run one corner at a time. Don't
get knocked out.
Yeah. So we do, and we realize, man, this thing is bad to the bone. So we decal it all up. We're going back and run the Winston. Well, that's when you used to have no pit road speed. Remember that? And we had he comes off of the track, 160, whatever, and hits pit road and stands back on the gas. And then he tries to stop and he slides by us with all 4 wheels locked up and he's screaming at me, the brakes ain't working. I said, all 4 wheels are locked up. Let's start last. And people think we won all 3 segments with T-Rex, but we didn't. We actually won all 3 segments of the Winston the year before, I think, 96, 95 or 96 with one of the other cars. But he starts in the back, drives up. They used to have the thing, so we didn't want to get too far up. Remember, they used to reverse.
Yeah, they invert.
Yeah, we didn't want to drive too far up. So he's like, man, we're really good, really good. So the next one, I think we run up to second or third, and we had to pit. It was pit then, right? It was all out pit, right?
Yeah.
So we pit, and I think we came out in third, and I forget, maybe Terry and Earnhardt, whoever was up in the front there. Well, they dropped the green flag.
Showtime.
And Jeff just goes around them, and he's leading the thing by the time they hit turn 2, and he just starts legging it. And like he's running laps 0.8 of a second faster than the second place car. And I mean, he's just gone and just building. So he wins the race. We go up, we do all the celebration, and I come back, and Buster, the inspector, says to me, hey, Bill wants to see you. So I'm thinking, me and Bill France are friends. He's going to go up there, we're going to have a beer and talk about the race and whatever. And Bill's sitting in that truck. Remember, in the lounge, they had that phone, like a beige push-button phone. Yeah. And go in there, and Bill's sitting there. You know, he smoked the Winstons. See that phone right there? You need to pick up that phone and call your boss and tell him that car's illegal. And I said, no, it's not illegal, Bill. You know, your guys watch it, past inspection. It's all fits all the rules. And he goes, it won't tomorrow. And, you know, the thing was, the chassis was so different. You know, when we dropped the nose of that thing and flattened it all out, with the floor pan raised, underbody aerodynamics, man, that thing it was like sucked to the ground. It was so fast in traffic because it wasn't really relying on just a spoiler or the air dam. It created that vacuum underneath of it. It was badass. But that was it. So that was the end of T-Rex.
Well, I got to go back just for a minute. This is the racer in me. What made you during that midday test? Because yes, you're right. It'd be 100 degrees and you're just doing nothing, you know, at Charlotte. We tested forever. What made you pick those springs? Did you calculate that? Did you and any engineer calculate that? Or did you just choose that out of your head?
I kind of choose out of my head because I've always had this theory, and it's going to sound crazy. Do you remember a guy named Duke Southard?
No, I don't. No.
Big old racer out of Florida. I think he ran New Smyrna a bunch and everything, but he had this suspension book, you know, but he always had this theory about front springs, split springs, you know, and when car transfers weight, you know, if you've got let's say you got a 1,500 pound spring over here and a 2,000 pound spring over here, you know, when that car rolls and transfer the weight, well, it's not going to push down that stiff spring as much as that other spring's going to come up. So the front of your car is going to be higher in the air, you know. And I was like, well, this thing's stiffer, and you know, maybe we just need to use the left front and make this thing square. Going back to my modified days and thinking about all that split spring stuff, and it just took off. Now, what I wasn't counting on was that underbody aerodynamic deal, like that. Yeah. It put the car at a platform where it stayed flat. And when it stayed flat and didn't let the air under the nose and everything, it just when it shut that air coming in, it still had to suck it out the back, you know, because we had the quarter pounds and stuff up. And so it was like ground effects almost.
So do you think that in our early days that our right front frame flexed so much that the right front area came up that we had to make up with it with a stiff spring? And now that you had this quality metal rigid, that's what you're saying. So the 1,900 pound right front days that was to make up for the flex. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I think that was some of it. And then as the tires got better, you know, the radial tires and things got better. And then we also found out, remember the old KNC rigs and stuff? When we saw what was happening to our front end, everybody like, holy crap. like the center links and the tie rods and the steering arms and all that stuff was just bending and flexing. The more we took that stuff out of there, the softer we could run those cars. Now, I mean, I don't know what they run, in the front of those cars. Now there's still a ton of force at places like Charlotte's got the same force, the wheel force transducer deal at that time, same force at Charlotte than center corner of Daytona, right? So a lot of force there, but they're when they got into the bump stops and all that stuff, it was crazy. I'm gonna tell you straight up, 1999, when Daytona 500 with a car that had like a 200-pound left front spring in it, basically had no left front spring, just sat on a bump stop all the way around.
That is so badass. Yeah. I'm sorry, everybody, that we got into this, but this is my jam. I might be crazy, but the best are, and Ray Evernham's a little off-centered too. So
yeah,
us chassis, yes, us chassis guys, we love that type of talk, and I'm hoping that all of you racers. That was for my son-in-law Brody Pompey. That I had it wrote down, and I showed him my notes. I said, "T-Rex is right here, buddy." Wow, that is what made your legend.